Attorney General Pam Bondi is absolutely shocked that some people out there are, one, unhappy with the way this administration chooses to operate, and two, willing to tie up tax dollars for their own purposes. But speaking as an American taxpayer, I am much less offended that my tax dollars are being used to pay these prosecutors than the ICE agents I'm also funding. Bondi is raging on Fox News over 6 federal prosecutors who said they would rather resign from their positions than, for some reason, prosecute the widow of the woman that ICE shot in cold blood.
Sean, we support Secretary Noem. We support our men and women of Homeland Security and ICE who are out there taking predators off the street every day around the country, and they're doing it in Minnesota. What happened in Minnesota? We had 6 prosecutors who suddenly decided they didn't want to support the men and women in ICE. One of them was busy doing a photo shoot with the New York Times while ICE was out there risking their lives. So they came, they said, we want to resign, but we want to use our annual leave up until April, meaning they wanted the taxpayers to pay for them to go on vacation because they decided they didn't want to support law enforcement. So the breaking news tonight, I fired them all. They're fired from the office. They want to be part of the resistance. Yeah, bring it on. They're not going to be working for Donald Trump and the Department of Justice any longer. But that's what we're up against, not only in Minnesota, but around this country.
That's almost impossible to comprehend, but nothing surprises me anymore. All right, Attorney General Pam. Yeah, go ahead.
And Sean, also, we had our great men and women in the U.S. Attorney's Office in California, in Eastern Michigan, say, we'll come in, we'll prosecute those cases. So get ready. Good riddance to the 6 that are gone. Our great other prosecutors from around the country are coming in to protect the men and women of ICE.
This is Kilmar Abrego Garcia all over again, but this time it's even worse. This is the government behaving badly, and that's putting it lightly, and then attempting to justify their own incompetent and vile behavior by doubling down in the dumbest ways possible. For Abrego Garcia, they had to pretend he had been a prolific drug trafficker and violent gang member. For Renee Good's murder at the hands of an incompetent, vile, and unremorseful ICE agent, they're now trying to convince the public that Good and her wife were somehow radical left agitators.
The of the situation are that the vehicle was weaponized and it attacked the law enforcement officer. He defended himself and he defended those individuals around him. That is the definition. When there is something that is weaponized to use against the public and law enforcement, that is an act of domestic terrorism. It happened in our shores. It happened here in our country. You don't get to change the facts just because you don't like them.
I don't know why they need to do any of that, though. Investigating Good's widow will do nothing to convince any more people that Jonathan Ross was right to shoot her without any kind of due process, of course. The people who already believe that Ross was justified in shooting her and then calling her a derogatory name immediately afterward don't need to be further convinced. They already believe what they've been told to believe. They have no agency of their own to look with their own eyes at what the rest of us all saw. They have no intelligence left within them to interpret what is so obviously in that video. They are the followers that this government wants, but the rest of us understand that even if Renee Good and her wife were out throwing Molotov cocktails into government buildings, she still did not deserve to be shot without any kind of due process. We also know that that's not why the ICE agent shot her in the first place, so retrofitting a story this way still does not work. It didn't work with Abrego Garcia, and it certainly is not going to work now. And Pam Bondi deciding that the American taxpayer should be mad about these prosecutors and not about the fact that ICE is better funded than most militaries around the world, and not the fact that ICE agents are just allowed to shoot and kill Americans for no reason, is tone deaf as hell, even for this administration, which is saying something. I have no problem paying for these prosecutors to go on vacation, as Bondi put it. But this is about the investigation into Renee Good's murder, or the lack of investigation. The Trump administration has tried to block the state of Minnesota from being involved in the investigation, and it also refused to open a civil rights investigation into Ross's killing of Good. Also, instead of looking into the ICE agent who actually pulled the trigger multiple times and then walked off seemingly unaffected and emboldened by what he had just done, they've decided to look into the widow of the woman they killed, calling Good a domestic terrorist, and assuming that her wife is probably also involved in some domestic terrorism, because why not? Two birds, right? The whole story and others like it are designed to make people question their own eyes, but more importantly, their own sanity, their own comprehension of the world, and the most basic mechanics of how that world works. It's gaslighting and propaganda, and a significant portion of the American people, for some reason, think of themselves as being impervious to propaganda, which makes them actually prime subjects for it. Why are we as a nation debating which direction Good's tires were pointed when she was trying to drive away from the ICE officers? Why are we debating whether or not she ran over an ICE agent? Not that she was trying to run over the agent, but that she did actually run over an ICE agent. We can all see that she did not, and we can all see that he walked away from the incident completely unscathed after having willfully, intentionally, and offensively, not defensively, killed someone. Why are we wasting time trying to convince brain-dead people of something so obvious? Hot take, but not everything should be up for debate. Both sides of an argument are not always equal. Debates like this are designed to waste people's time and mental energy. Half the time Trump is saying some nonsense is because he or his people know that it will take up some headlines for a while, because people have to debate now what he really meant when he said something, or because others now have to take time and energy out of their days to explain why what he said was nonsense. You would think that we'd be hip to all of this by now, but here we are 11 years into the Trump era of American history and barely the wiser. Anyway, Pam Bondi said that these prosecutors are leaving their work with the government and joining the deep state. I thought the deep state was some nebulous, scary, underground organization that we're all supposed to be just vaguely afraid of. I didn't know that one could just join the deep state. Where does one go to do that? She said that they're becoming members of the resistance. And yeah, I mean, like, sure, they're resisting government oppression and incompetency, but she acts again like they're just signing up to join Dumbledore's army or something like that. She said that's what we're facing around the country, the deep state in many of these offices. They want to be a part of the resistance. Yeah, bring it on. They're not going to be working for Donald Trump and the Department of Justice any longer. Yeah, I think that's the point of them resigning, Pam. It's also worth mentioning that these prosecutors don't work for any one president or one administration. They work for the country and for the American people. Pam Bondi, of all people, should know that, but the fact that she doesn't is kind of the whole point. The fact that Pam Bondi thinks she works for Donald Trump is the problem, and it's exactly the reason why these prosecutors resigned. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.